It's Bernie 2.0. The independent Vermont senator officially kicked off his 2020 presidential bid earlier today in the Bernie capital of Brooklyn. On full display, the same passion and progressive ideas that gave Hillary Clinton a run for her money in 2016. During the kickoff, he put more focus on his personal background. He also took a hard swipe at President Trump.
I want to thank all of you for being part of a campaign which is not only going to win the Democratic nomination, which is not only going to defeat Donald Trump, who is the most dangerous president in modern American history, but with your help, we are going to transform this country.
Sanders arguably has the highest name recognition among the announced candidates and raised an astounding $10 million in just the first week. But with multiple other Democratic candidates running on his same message, will voters feel the burn at the ballot box? Joining me now, former Virginia State Delegate Michael Futrell, who was a delegate for Bernie in 2016. Also joining me, Democratic strategist and CNN political commentator Dave Jacobson, who worked for Hillary Clinton's 2008 campaign. Got a couple Bernie experts on, and I appreciate it. Dave, Bernie's contrast to Hillary Clinton was fairly clear. How does he distinguish himself this time around?
Right. Last cycle, it was a binary choice. It was the establishment versus the outsider who was running sort of this political revolution campaign.
Yeah.
I think the challenge that Bernie Sanders has going into this cycle is that he's very much defined the narrative of the 2020 campaign, at least among the progressive wing of many of the candidates who are running on Medicare for all, free tuition-free college, lowering the cost of prescription drugs. And so the challenge is he's going to have to really define himself in a very authentic way. But I think he can, because these are the issues that he sort of brought to the forefront of the narrative going into 2016.
Yeah.
Precisely. And so, you know, the challenge is, if you're one of the other candidates, how do you stand out running on Medicare for all? Like, if you're Elizabeth Warren, right? Like, how do you make a different case than Bernie Sanders did in 2016 and then Bernie Sanders is doing this go around?
So, Michael, we have new polling from New Hampshire, where the first presidential primary will be in 11 months. Bernie is leading the pack with likely Democratic voters at 26%, with Joe Biden close behind at 22%. Kamala Harris is the only other candidate with double digits. That should worry other candidates, especially as Elizabeth Warren, don't you think?
Well, absolutely. To be clear, we know that Senator Sanders was probably the front runner jumping out into this. What's a little different here in this election is with the 20-so-odd people who are potentially going to come out and run for president in this 2020 election, the thing that jumps out is no one really has a base yet. They have a small percentage of people, but they don't really have a base. And Senator Sanders is the first to actually have that. So when you think about those who are cutting in, the thing about it is they're trying to make a copy of the original blueprint. And it's going to be tough for them to be able to take that away from Senator Sanders. So the question is, what is the base that they're going to be able to own? Even though his message is spread out across, his message is already established with the majority of the people who have kind of bought into this program and this process.
Well, Michael, let me stick with you for a second, because last time Bernie had some problems demographically. Those problems have not gone away. He still needs to shore up, African-American voters. Do you think he is better positioned to do that, or will that still be his challenge?
Well, and that's going to be very interesting for us to find out overall. But that's not just a Bernie Sanders issue. That's a Democratic Party issue right now. Understand that I was elected here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and the things that we have going on, discussing race and discussing the base with black voters. I think what you're going to see in this election is no longer can people get away with just the basic talk of showing up and coming to churches. Right now, what has to happen is we need to see real plans that are established. We need to be able to see measurables that are addressed. And the question is, who's going to build a staff that can address those issues? So while he does have a great opportunity to be able to allow people to see who he is when it comes to the issues that impact the black community, the question is, what is he going to do, and what is the staff that he's going to put together to get that job done?
Interesting. And we should note he is going to Selma tomorrow to commemorate the 54th anniversary of the Bloody Sunday March for civil rights. Dave, I think Bernie actually has a really good shot at the Democratic nomination. But when it comes to the general, I think he's got some challenges. One that he had the first time, he wasn't all that willing to take on either Hillary or Trump frontally last go around. He wanted to talk about ideas. Didn't really want to get dirty. Is he ready for a Trump fight should he win the nomination?
One would hope. I mean, look, I think you're right. I think he could potentially be formidable in a general election. In fact, Quinnipiac just put out a poll that has Bernie Sanders behind Donald Trump in a general election matchup just by 2%. Trump's at 47%, Bernie Sanders is at 45%, according to a poll that was reported on by Politico just Friday. I think the fact that Bernie Sanders simultaneously also has this sort of groundswell of grassroots support, as he was able to raise $6 million from 250,000 people in a mere 24 hours, is fascinating, and I think that could propel a very well-funded campaign. The challenge is he has to go negative. As someone who runs campaigns for a living, I can tell you we do negative campaigning because it works. Period. Like, you don't want to go negative unless you have to, but you do it because it's a necessary evil, and he is going to have to do that.
He is, and we'll see if he can muster that this time around. Michael, Dave, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you much for having us.
Appreciate it.
More to come after.